Simone, I'm excited to be with you here coming back from Natal Con. We've had pieces on us in the past few days in the BBC, in the New York Times. There's going to be a CNN one we know. There's going to be an NPR one we know that haven't come out yet. One on an Italian station, one of the two major stations in the country. But Wired did the most unhinged piece.
Which is weird. I grew up loving Wired. This is so strange.
I did too. I thought of them as like a semi-professional, not semi-professional. I actually thought of them as like a premium.
Absolutely. Beautiful print magazine. Loved their pieces. This is weird.
Yeah, but their piece was completely both unhinged and non-factual. Like they got almost every fact wrong in ways that even your average based camp watcher would know.
Yeah. I don't know, even your understanding of basic linguistics would know.
Yeah, we're going to read a bit of the piece and then go over statistics on what's been happening with the pronatalist movement when contrasted with other movements recently, because we've now significantly passed in terms of like search traffic, effective altruism, AI safety, other stuff like that, which is really cool.
The title of the Wired article is "Far-Right Influencers Are Hosting a 10K per person matchmaking weekend to repopulate the earth." So they're claiming that it costs $10,000 to attend Natal Con, which is not true.
Well, okay, so if you're a watcher of this show, you know we've been promoting the conference constantly for a long time. We've been promoting it with small discounts, but it also means the conference cost nothing near $10,000 to go to. I know it was expensive. I think it was around $1,000.
It was $1,000. So then $900 with our 10% discount.
Yeah, which is a lot, I know, but they also did a really good job of making it good and fun, like from my perspective.
Yeah.
And I do think that amount of money is needed to screen out crazy people.
Oh, plus also, like, have you seen how much any event space charges for food? Like one cookie, $10. And they served breakfast, lunch, and dinner on Saturday, plus snacks, plus open bar at dinner. And then there was dinner and open bar on Friday. You can't use professional venue spaces and basically do anything less than that these days.
I think that what people are thinking when they think of like costs or they're comparing it to something is they're comparing it to a con, like a furry con or something like that.
Yeah, where there's an artist alley, there's absolutely zero food, and then there's just some speakers and it's at a bigger event space. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not thinking like, okay, they've got to pay for the speakers, they've got to pay for the hotels for the speakers. I don't think any of the speakers are paid, but they got to pay for the hotels for the speakers. They sometimes need to pay for flights. They need to pay for all of the venue space. They need to pay for security. They need to pay for insurance, and then they need to pay for all the meals and the open bar
too, because there were protesters out the first night. There were lots of people trying to get in who didn't have registration.
Yeah, and it wasn't just like a normal venue. Like it was like a really nice venue. And then they had the second one where they rented out a museum. So like I'd say for what it was, it seemed reasonably priced to me.
I agree.
Just so people know, we donated to this to make it happen because I knew that like last year they were in the red in running it. And I wanted to help them not risk that again. Kevin Dolan took a personal hit on that. And so, but we weren't organizing it. We weren't personally going to suffer if this didn't end up working out. But the $15,000 thing is insane. Sorry.
Yeah.
The $10,000 in the title of the Wired article being that factually inaccurate.
Yeah. To literally have a title with that egregious of a factual error is wild. I don't know. I knew journalism was largely bankrupt in terms of quality, but I guess having loved Wired so much, I'm still so stunned.
Here's the thing. I know, and somebody could be like, well, how can you be sure that nobody made a $10,000 ticket purchase, like maybe at the last minute or something like that? And the answer is because we donated $10,000 to the conference. That's what we donated.
Yeah, I think someone else probably in the media knew that. I think we'd mentioned that to someone, or it was out somewhere.
Yeah, but the point being is that was the second biggest donation to the conference. So I know they didn't get money from anyone else. Here's what I assume probably happened, because Kevin loves effing with journalists. He probably, and I think he even mentioned he did this at one point, when he knew a journalist was hostile, gave them a comically high cost figure to be like, hey, I'm okay with having you come here and write a hit piece if you pay me $10,000.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Okay, but it would mean that they didn't do any research on like the conference or anything around it. But anyway, go into the piece. Let's read a bit because it gets really unhinged.
Should I just go straight to the unhinged part, or should I
Yes.
read
Yeah,
it?
go to the unhinged part.
So this is what really gets me. Natal Conference organizer Kevin Dolan, a father of at least 6, according to Politico, has previously stated that eugenics, the belief that white people are genetically superior, and the pronatalist movement are very much aligned, which is the most unhinged definition of eugenics I have ever heard. One, in case you are one of these unhinged people, eugenics as defined, look at Wikipedia, and Wikipedia is not a conservative dominated space. This is well documented too. People have actually looked at the backgrounds of all active profile or page editors. So Wikipedia defines it as believing there are good traits and bad traits on a universal level, and trying to maximize the good traits and minimize the bad traits on a societal level. We don't agree with that, but that's what the sort of going definition is in society. And when we don't support the concept of eugenics by that definition, for sure. Some people, also especially on the tech right, who talk about eugenics, and I think this is more where Kevin Dolan is, are just really going to the roots of the word, which is eu, good, genics, genes, good genes, like having an interest in passing on favorable genes and traits, which really is a culture and context specific thing, meaning that each group has, things that they want to pass on to future generations that they should be proud of. But they just say that eugenics is, quote, the belief that white people are genetically superior, which is...
But I would assume, like, a lot of people accuse us of
definition of white supremacism, right? But not...
Yeah, so and this is something that like presumably went through editors or something like that, right?
One
Like
would hope.
This is a definition of eugenics that I would assume a middle schooler, like your average intelligence middle schooler.
Well, even if we ran this through like ChatGPT or Claude and asked, hey, can you just quickly edit this for me? That they would probably point out that a word was
actually hold on, let's do a thing. Can you take that paragraph, copy and paste it into Claude and ask what grade level they would assume the writer is? But while she's doing that, this is wild to me because, sometimes we get called eugenicists and I have to be like, actually, we're not technically eugenicists because eugenics means that you want to coerce an entire population to do something using either the government or using laws or using social pressure. And we believe in polygenics, which is everyone being able to make the genetic choices that they want. So one, we're not even eugenicists by like the standard definition, but I can understand how someone can make that mistake. They hear, oh, they do genetic selection. They understand, like, with their vague understanding of eugenics, that it means, trying to make genes better in any potential way. And I can understand that misunderstanding of the definition of eugenics if you haven't recently read the definition just based on like a vague understanding. However, this misunderstanding of eugenics is so egregious for what is presumably like a science article thing, right? That they could make it, I'm shocked.
So this is what Claude says when I asked it, what is the grade level of the following paragraph and does it contain any errors? Claude says, I can analyze this paragraph for reading level and errors. The paragraph is written at approximately a high school 9th to 10th grade reading level. It uses some advanced vocabulary, organizer, eugenics, genetically, and pronatalist, which is this high school vocabulary now? Because yikes. Also, we need to not send our kids to high school. That's anyway, and has complex sentence structure with multiple clauses and em dashes. There is a factual error in the paragraph. Eugenics is incorrectly defined. Eugenics is not specifically the belief that white people are genetically superior. Eugenics more broadly refers to a set of beliefs and practices aimed at improving the genetic quality of the human population, often by encouraging reproduction among people with certain traits and discouraging it amongst others. While eugenics has historically been associated with racist ideologies, including white supremacy, the definition as presented in the paragraph is overly narrow and inaccurate.
But it's not just, it's inaccurate in a way where I would like, this is what gets me. This went through editors.
Yeah, well.
But what the piece actually ended up being really good for us because some of my friends, like Stanford GSB type people and other like high profile people in Austin, when they saw this piece about the $15,000 entrance fee, they were like, ooh, this looks this looks fancy. I want to know about this. I might want to go to this. And I think
Yeah,
we
it
got
makes
some,
it sound great. It's evil behind closed doors matchmaking conference for the elite that are going to replace the future of humans. Like, I don't know. That sounds, sign me up. That sounds great.
right?
It's
Now,
not exactly true, but I mean,
I also wanted to do a roundup on, unless there's any other parts of this Wired article you want to read that you think are fun. What did they say about us in it?
oh, it just called us influencers, which is, whenever I hear influencers, I just think of like a makeup influencer or a Mormon influencer. So I'm like, wow, okay.
But it is kind of sad to see like how many publications have sort of descended into this realm of just like tabloidism, that Wired would get like factual errors in both their title and like basic language errors, like of scientific facts in their text.
Well, it's also just, there are just so many unhinged things. Okay, no, okay, yeah, sorry, which is just like other little details that just show how it's written from a progressive perspective that's so myopically stuck in its own ideological bubble that it only sees things through a political lens. And I mean that because the article also criticized the fact that the AT&T Hotel and Conference Center allowed Natal Con to be there in the first place. They included a quote from a representative of UT Austin who just said, "We allow anyone to host here. We support the First Amendment right to free speech."
I remember this part.
But then they end with, the venue also hosted an Ayn Rand conference in February. Isn't like, as you can see, they're just,
as you can see, they're out of control.
Ayn Rand, can you believe it? It's just,
and they just spent the entire piece calling our movement Nazis, like actual Nazis and white supremacists. Yeah. And then they're like the equivalent movements like Ayn Rand.
Like, I mean, Ayn Rand.
They're just like, you're not allowed to have ideas outside of their bubble. Whoever wrote this and edited this. And if you do, you are a white nationalist. Like, that's it. Like, you go to a conference and the conference is, there were like people of all ethnicities there, people of all sexualities there, people of all belief systems there. There were even, apparently there was one homophobic person, which I feel bad about because they were not mean, but they were unapproving of one of the gay couples that went. And I felt really bad about that because they had come based on, liking us. And I'm like, you're going to get that at something like this. But from what I heard, there was only one openly homophobic individual at the event, which is saying a lot for what is apparently a Nazi white supremacist event. But what it showed me is just like, you can't say anything outside of their bubble.
No kidding.
But I want to go to graphs now because I want to focus on the growth of the pronatalist movement, which I have found really telling of which I have found has shocked me. So the first graph I'm going to put on screen here is the search volume on Google Trends of pronatalism versus effective altruism in the United States, where blue is pronatalism. And as you can see, pronatalism in the past year has jumped to being maybe like 5 or 6 times, I guess, on average, the search volume of effective altruism, our sort of interest online, which is wild to me because, growing up in the Silicon Valley area, I thought of effective altruism as sort of everything, like one of the biggest movements in the world, like the big social scene for smart people. And if you look at a map of the United States, a heat map of where people are searching for these, I found this really funny. What you'll see if you're watching this on a podcast is pronatalism is blue, effective altruism is red. Effective altruism is just California, Idaho, and then a few New England states, including like in New York and Massachusetts.
Yeah, and with the exception of Idaho, it seems to be really concentrated around densely urban areas. When you look at the district area, it is clearly also the densely urban areas in California. The rest doesn't care. And a little bit in the Pacific Northwest and then around Michigan. So basically, I don't know what's going on in Iowa, but
yeah, what's going on in Iowa? There must be like a big EA thing there or something, or
like a wealthy EA donor moved to Iowa and like did some YIMBY project there. That's like my guess. It seems like
that would be my guess as well.
Yeah.
Or maybe they fund something in politics. Well, we can ask. Yeah. I'll add this in post.
Okay.
She meant Idaho, not Iowa, and neither a Grok search or a Google search could determine why it has this blip. It might just be an anomaly. But I found that to be really interesting. And then if you look at it on the global level, again, you can see that we now have moved from being like well below effective altruism in terms of search volume to being maybe 4 times larger, and pretty reliably so for the past year or so. And I note here that effective altruism has hundreds of millions of dollars going to it. We got one 500K grant a few years ago and made all this happen.
Yeah.
And not that we're doing it on our own, like Kevin Dolan is doing a great job, but he's not getting outside donations. When we gave him the 10K donation, he was like, this is a huge donation. It means so much to me. When I gave it, I was like, I'm sorry, we can't do more. We just don't have that much money. And so I know that he's not getting big donations from other people. And if you look at the global map here, this one I absolutely love.
Yeah, actually, I just to make a note, I think that the biggest donation made relative to demographic collapse was the one that the Elon Musk Foundation made to the Dean Spears-led demography research at the University of Austin. Dean Spears did not attend Natal Con. Dean Spears has said in recent stories, basically like, oh, Elon Musk's donation hasn't affected our work in any way. He's like trying to disassociate from Elon Musk, if anything. So
yeah,
it basically like they are one of the least vocal presences in the movement's public discourse that would be associated with search volume. And I think that really speaks volumes to what's going on here, that this is not a funded public discourse. It's driven by some very strong personalities and some very strong concerns.
Yeah. And if you look at the global breakdown of where people are focused on each of these, sorry, actually, we should probably mention what effective altruism is for some of our viewers who may not know. Effective altruism is a fairly large, or I thought large, like this is why I'm benchmarking ourselves off of it, movement around the Silicon Valley community. This is what Sam Bankman-Fried was funding, but it
first emerged at Oxford University, though.
Yeah, from like Sam Altman gives it funding type stuff. Like a lot of the guy who founded Ethereum gives it a lot of funding.
Vitalik,
yeah, pretty much if you're like an alt productive intellectual and you are progressive coded or don't want to like offend people by being overtly conservative coded, this is where pretty much all of them have been for a long time. And it runs a number of very large organizations. We'll get to some of them in a second that do get, I think it's 400 million a year is what I remember last. I can add
That's insane.
Yes, I was right. It's around 400 million. In 2019, they got $416 million. And that's the first search result that comes up when I Google how much do they get per year. Yeah, and then redistributes it to various charities that they see as effective. Of course, most of them won't work with us, but we did get a grant from a survival and flourishing fund, which is technically effective altruist, which I really appreciate.
That was a game changer for us. Yeah.
It was a game changer, and it's allowed us to create this movement. And we'll talk a bit about why I think the effective altruist money gets piddled away so much, and they really haven't been able to make things like AI safety, which we're going to compare ourselves to in just a little bit, take off in the way that Natalism has, even though they spent millions of dollars on promoting it every year. So here next, you see the worldwide map, which I found really effective, are very interesting, of where the search volume is strong. So basically across the whole world, the United States, Central America, South America, all natalism is winning over effective altruism. Russia, it's winning. France and Spain and Portugal, it's winning. Eastern Europe, it's winning. India, it's winning. Africa, it's winning. Middle East is winning. So where is effective altruism bigger? Canada won. The UK, Germany, Italy, Norway, Sweden.
China, where they've just given up.
China,
basically.
I found, well, you're going to see China as a trend across here, which I find really interesting.
Yeah.
And Australia, I found that interesting. It also looks like Indonesia, which is weird. I don't know what's up with that, but I assume that they don't really have a population problem. But let's go to AI safety, right? Like AI safety, because people can say, okay, this stuff is just getting big because the trends are in your favor, right? It's not any effort you or, and I point out, like, we're a team. Like, whether it's us or Kevin Dolan or Dan Hess or Catherine Pocklock, who wrote Hannah's Children, we all talk, we all work to coordinate, or even the people at
Heritage too. They're while we may advocate for very different styles of prenatalism or be excited about different policies, we are very much all fighting for the same thing.
Yeah, and if they're doing something, they email us and let us know. And if we're doing something, we email them and let them know. We ask their thoughts. Like there is really like an inter-community communication web here, and it is a small team, and most of the team is self-funded.
Yeah.
Like Dan Hess gets, I don't think he's ever gotten any funding for his pronatalist work. He's
No,
just like
in fact,
a
he's
guy.
donated so much money of like his own to fund things. Like at Natal Con, he distributed an incredibly helpful bound fact book packed with graphs, plus a laminated one pager just summarizing the basic.
Oh, can we
details.
create a link to that in the
Oh, we can. Yeah, we absolutely
down
should. Yeah, so
below
do
here,
check
'cause it
out
was
Dan Hess,
so
aka More
good.
Births fact sheet and report on prenatalism. It's just like, okay, if you need a primer, go here.
Well, it's
Look at
like
everything.
literally every statistic on it I've ever seen. Like
Yeah,
it was,
no,
it was
it's
incredible.
amazing. And you know, he did that at his own expense. He came to Natal Con with that, gave it away for free to everyone who went to make them more informed. I mean, this man is so awesome. And no one is paying him to do this. He has a date. He works full time and takes care of his family of 6 and helps his wife. And he also does this somehow and is very successful at it. We don't get any pay from the work that we do. We also have full-time day jobs and other projects.
We've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars of our personal money on pronatalist advocacy without ever getting any money for it. So like this is just like an us thing. Like I think the pronatalists spend a lot of money and make these types of sacrifices on this because they do genuinely believe this stuff.
Yeah.
And this is when we're going to go into the AI safety stuff and some evidence that the key people in this movement don't genuinely believe it. And that's one of the reasons why it hasn't done as well. But okay, so, and the China thing, I wonder why China is more effective altruists than natalists. You think they'd be like freaked out, right? By the way, for people who are wondering,
I mean, one, I think this is one of those things that this is actually the theme of your talk at Natal Con. When you try to impose natalist policies on a population, it backfires, they push back, they want nothing to do with it. And that's what's happening in China now. It's all part of lying flat too. You know, be productive, go have kids. And they're like, you know what? We're the last generation. Thank you very much. Goodbye. And I think that's part of what's going on.
I'd also note that we mentioned this in other episodes, but you can check this out yourself. The base camp Discord, for example, is significantly more active. I'd say maybe 4 times as active as the EA forums. So this isn't just like us saying like, oh, you know, whatever. Our podcast is, if you go to the podcast ranker, it does better than the best effective altruist podcast by a
and on that note,
large margin.
Huge shout out to everyone from the podcast and from the Discord who came out either to Natal Con and or to our meetup before it on Friday. It was so cool to see you guys. You know who you are. Like what a dream come true it was to see some of you for the first time, some of you again. We only regret that we didn't have more time to hang out and chat, but it was great. What we had was
and it always destroys us when somebody's is disappointed. We had one person who was like, I wanted more ultra rich people here. You know, he's like, I thought the tech elite were going to come, like all the Founders Fund funders.
Yeah, where's Andreessen Horowitz? Where's Founders Fund?
And I was like, all these people have like really interesting startups that are doing well. Is that not good enough for you? And he's like, no. So that was, you know, I always, you know, if you're
there was only, but he was the only one person I think who was disappointed in the event, but it's also because he is one of the world's most elite people, and so I think it's really only hard to
that caliber.
Win, you know, unless we had like the president of 5 major countries present. I don't think we would have really impressed him.
What do you think China being more effective altruist than natalist is about? Like that seems weird.
I think that effective altruism is the philosophy of people who are negative utilitarians, and I think that China is a negative utilitarian country. I think they want to end suffering. I think they want to end their suffering. I think they want to end their cycle. Pronatalism is the philosophy of expansionist countries that want to grow and that want to see more and do more. And that's all those other countries I'm looking at.
Yeah. Well, by the way, if you want to recreate this, the way I did this is every time I did this, I tried to compare like to like. So here we have natalism as a belief with compared to effective altruism as a cause area. And then in these next graphs, we're looking at natalism as a belief compared to AI safety field of study.
Yeah, because you don't want to compare search terms because there could be misspellings or something else weird like that.
So the first graph here I'm putting up is in the world, and you can see that in the last year, Natalism has soundedly beat, but pretty narrowly as well, AI safety as something people are searching for. You can see Eliezer Yudkowsky's world tour as a big spike in AI safety, and you can see our first virality around natalism as a big spike in natalism.
Mhm.
Here's a graph of this on the world stage, but it gets more interesting if you look at a map of the countries. That's this next graph of countries here. Natalism is everywhere in the world bigger than AI safetyism, except for England and China, which is really interesting. When if anyone needs to be freaking out about natalism, it's China, but this is where we are.
Well, I think that's part of the issue, though, right? Is that China has a problem because they don't care. They're not freaking out about it. If someone's freaking out about it, some of them are at least trying. And I think that in China, only the CCP is trying.
Yeah. And here we've got Quiverfull versus natalism. I thought this was interesting because I wanted to look at the more traditional, like Christian thing.
Okay.
Full's in red, natalism's in blue, and you can see Quiverfull has basically entirely died. And we're going to do a separate episode on how the Quiverfull movement died.
I really want to do that. Yes.
But yeah, natalism is now maybe 100 times bigger than Quiverfull in terms of a belief system.
I remember when that was, you just couldn't not hear about it. It was such a thing.
Mm-hmm. And we look now at Quiverfull versus pro-natalist as search terms, because before I was trying to compare like to like. So I was like, okay, let's see if we're looking at them as search terms. At Quiverfull belief system, natalism as a belief system. You can see here natalism has overtaken it pretty soundedly, but not as soundedly, maybe like 4x bigger these days, and really only started regularly beating it, I'd say, this year, which is not this last year, like 2024.
Year of tipping points.
And now I want to talk about like why AI safety has done such a bad job at this. So this last graph I had earlier this morning, you searched and you found Eliezer Yudkowsky being dwarfed by us. I assume it's because you misspelled his name, because in reality, he's still slightly edging us out in terms of public attention.
We did that search, by the way, because on our flight back from Austin, both of us watched simultaneously on YouTube a Strange Aeons video on Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality, the Harry Potter fan fiction that Eliezer Yudkowsky wrote. It's just so much fun. Speaking of effective altruism, speaking of Eliezer Yudkowsky, to see someone from completely outside that community learn about it and freak out.
Study it and be like, wait, what's going on here?
Yeah.
Early in our relationships, I was listening to the audiobook of The Methods of Rationality, and you got into it a little bit. We both stopped it because it was like really...
You made it further than I did. It just got so repetitive, and it didn't deliver on its value proposition. I wanted to see the proposed science or reasoning behind magic, because that was in this fan universe, Harry Potter is, this child of like a brilliant engineer, and he's a genius, and he gets into Hogwarts and says, I'm going to find out the science behind this and then use my knowledge to save humanity and expand throughout the universe. And I mean, it sounds great. You hear this and you're like, this is a great premise. Like, oh my gosh. And like as soon as he gets his Gringotts account, he's like, I can play arbitrage with this. Like it starts out so promising. And then it just, anyway, definitely check out the Strange Aeons video because she's also hilarious and wonderful.
But I found a number of things really telling, and I think it's likely Eliezer Yudkowsky's influence as sort of the face of AI safety. I mean, he's sort of the mirroring face to us. If we're the face of pronatalism, whether the pronatalists like it or not,
safety, it's got to be him. Yeah,
he's the face of AI safety.
Yeah.
Fun thing. So I asked Grok if it could pair any anime character to Malcolm. Like, which character is Malcolm Collins most like? First, it said Lelouch from Code Geass, which I absolutely love. And Simone, I told Simone this, and she goes, "Oh, that's no surprise. You like his character only because he reminds you of yourself." And I'm like, okay, whatever. But then the next one it said Light Yagima from Death Note. And I was like, okay, I like that too. And when I asked it, what character would you pair Eliezer with? It said L And Simone got annoyed at that because she's like, but he's incompetent, but he's also slovenly and an antagonist, which works for me. And he got into this very differently. One of the things she noted is that while he was writing Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality, he would regularly tell people, oh, I'll put out more chapters or faster chapters if you give more money to our nonprofit.
Well, this is because I think it's because he co-founded MIRI, originally the Singularity Institute, which was supposed to do research on AI stuff, which would also explain why he became one of the early AI doomer people. And I think because people have dunked on MIRI for not being very productive, that among other things, Eliezer was not contributing a whole lot because he was just messing around and writing a fan fiction. And so I think he felt pressured by the team to write to use his fan fiction to shill.
I don't think that's it.
You don't think so? They weren't like,
I
dude,
think
you're not doing anything. At least make us money.
No, I think what you and other people don't understand is a nonprofit, especially if you founded and owned the nonprofit, can sometimes just be a thing that pays you a salary.
Well, yeah, and I think he was getting a salary from MIRI, not doing anything, and the other MIRI team members were giving him shade for that.
I don't even know if MIRI had a board back then, Simone.
But he co-founded it, and he still had co-founders, and I think he got shade for it. But
my read is what was happening is he was begging for money, and most of that money just paid for his lifestyle.
Yeah.
I don't think that much of the money at all was going to AI research.
Well, it wasn't because MIRI
is famously unproductive. Like
yeah.
And she mentioned that in the Strange Aeon space that they're known for not getting a lot of papers out. They're known for not getting a lot of real research out, which to me further indicates what I think, which is that it's literally just his GoFundMe account for his lifestyle through the lens of a nonprofit, because technically he's getting the word out about rationality, because technically he's getting the word out about AI safety. I would bet that if during that period, if you look at, I would bet over 50% of the money that they raised was just paid out to him in salary.
Oh my gosh.
That's what I think.
I wonder, hold on. So our nonprofit posts its financials on a nonprofit.
Oh, go to Grok and see if you can find out.
So I want to see if they post their
his
financials.
Personal salary during that period.
Sure.
And what you'll see if you look at our nonprofit financials is that we take no money from the nonprofit, and when I say we put tons of money towards our nonprofit, there was a Guardian piece, I want to say, a few years ago, or it might have been a Telegraph piece where they actually audited our finances to see how much money we were putting into our nonprofit. This was before we got the big grant, and after that we stopped doing this. But before that, we were putting 45% of our yearly income into our nonprofit, which is a lot when you have, I think back then it was like 3 kids, where we're just like, no, we absolutely have to make this work. So what you see within the
doesn't look like they make their financials public, which
that makes sense. You have a complete inverse of what's happening within the AI safety.
Oh my gosh, their total revenues fluctuated between 1.5 million and 3 million annually.
What? How have we managed to make AI safe?
With expenses including salaries for its small team of researchers and staff. So in 2019, MIRI reported total expenses of around 2.4 million, with roughly 1.5 million allocated to salaries for its 20 to 30 employees. So if I take 1.5 divided by 30 is 50,000. And I bet some were making more than others.
Yeah.
Especially if it was just 20 employees. So, oh my gosh.
That is my bet about what's going on with that. Well, and keep in mind, now I'd point this out. Now contrast this with natalism. I'm trying to think of any natalists who make money off of their work with natalism. Literally just Lime and Stone, from what I'm aware of. And
I mean,
maybe
but also
Catherine
not
Pockello.
That much, because Lime and Stone has a day job as a demographer that literally helps very large corporations determine how many diapers to produce. Like he has to work, and then
he also
does a lot of work raising money for the Institute for Family Studies, which I'm sure, yes, of course, pays him as well, but he is piecing this together. He has a
secondary job, which I think is his primary income.
Well, and I think maybe the Institute for Family Studies is his side gig, but he also has to raise money for them. So it's not. Yeah. Anyway,
Catherine Pockello, her day job.
Catherine Pockello is a professor of economics, so she has a full-time day job, and she worked with the publisher. I mean, I think her book has been very successful, but a successful book these days, especially if you worked with a publisher, is not making you a lot of money. So I don't think she's getting any
A
material
book in the
wealth from this.
top 1%, you should see our video on Nobody Reads Anymore, can earn you 20K. Like even
If you're in the top
one.
1%. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I don't think that that's a significant income source for her. And this matters a lot when you're
Mhm.
thinking about this stuff, because it now contrast it with the AI safety people. Every one of the top AI safety people and top effective altruists I
Making
know,
50 to 100K at least.
making 50 to 100K at least. Their main source of income is donations. And you even saw people like, I think it was like Will McCaskill or some of the other people who were running like major like effective altruism organizations write pieces a few years back, especially when Sam Bankman-Fried was big, about why people running these organizations should be able to indulge in luxuries. Remember, they did things like bought a castle at one point. This is one of the major EA groups. Yeah, they bought a castle. They bought a college at Oxford and they were going to turn it into, or at Cambridge, I can't remember which, and they were going to try to turn it into like a new college, and they ended up just using it for sex parties.
What? Oh,
well, this is what they said. I was at whatever school this was. I don't remember which one it was, but I remember doing a tour and I was like, whatever happened to that? And somebody was like, oh yeah, it became known for sex parties.
Well, I mean, it was college, but
well, sure. An effective altruist.
Well,
you know, they do.
Yeah, but I mean, like rationalism and effective altruism. And as
you should see our episode on the EA to sex worker pipeline if you want to learn more about the lifestyles that are common within this community. But I think through action, what we see between these two communities is one community that really believes what they're saying and working on, and another community where it's a performative way to make an income. Yeah. And I think that if you are freaked out about like AI safety or something like
also,
that,
like who's reading these reports that they're making? Who's reading these studies?
No, but look at who's putting their money where their mouth is. Of these two movements, it contrasts Eliezer Yudkowsky begging, you know, with any update he made to the book, you know, and putting out chapters at a whatever pace, to us who do daily videos every weekday at 8 a.m. EST on this channel. Contrast that. It's a wild difference. And I don't think we've ever really begged. We've said we would love it if you put us in your will or something, put the nonprofit in your will. And if you do, this is the promise we have, by the way. And you
that's if you put the Techno Puritan Federation.
Oh yeah, this is Techno Puritan, so not even this. But if you put Techno Puritan in your will and it ends up becoming a big thing and you send us your genes, we will put those genes along with like the amount that you contributed in case it does end up becoming a big thing and ends up creating like artificial realities and ends up needing genes for sources on that, or ends up cloning people in the future or doing human editing or something, that you might be one of the resurrected people. I thought that's a fun little thing you can do. But literally no one has told us they're doing that. So like, it's not like we're getting anything from that. And in terms of like active donations, the main ones we get are hate donations for when people get pissed off by progressives and they live in a like more progressive environment. They donate. Two
people donate $10 a month minus PayPal fees. It's like $9.50. So.
Oh, they do. That's really nice.
So we make $20 a month
for daily, for like 45-minute long episodes.
But no, I mean, like to those who don't, that is like really genuinely kind. We appreciate that.
No, that is genuinely kind. Yeah. I really appreciate it. And the money does, like, as I've pointed out, you are getting much more out of that than you're getting out of like effective altruism and what they're doing, right? Like we have so little, and yet we've been able to, at the conference, the other thing that really got me at the conference is I've been to effective altruist conference. This was one of the most competently organized conferences I've ever been to.
Shout out to Luke and Kevin. I mean, my gosh.
The quality of the food, first of all, was like good quality food.
Those mini corn dogs.
It was really like nice. The people I met there were, you know, I had one person who emailed after this and they're like, it exceeded all my expectations. This is somebody who's living in Austin. You know, people were coming in from all around the world. I was so excited to
Hong
talk
Kong,
to them.
Singapore. It was pretty wild. Yeah.
Yeah, and we had a lot of like really amazing speakers, and we didn't have, last time like people got in a fight, like I didn't get in a fight with any Catholics this time, you know, which was really nice. This is over IVF versus, you know, non-IVF stuff. But yeah, I think that it was really like a victory lap for the prenatalist movement, which was really fun.
Yeah.
Do you have any final thoughts on this or the Wired piece or the recent press we've been getting?
I think that people who want to see this movement as evil are going to continue to do so, but it seems to be only to our benefit. And I am just really happy with how the conference went and how the movement is growing. And it gives me hope for the future, because a lot of the people at the conference were really like, there was not a lot of cultural overlap, and it made me fear less for a cultural mass extinction, which is something that we're really afraid about. Like, we want a lot of different opinions in the future. And Natal Con felt like anything but a monoculture, which was really cool. So
yeah, it was really interesting. These are not small differences. This is us thinking they're murdering babies, they think we're murdering babies, and yet we get along. Like, it is absolutely wild that we're able to get along, and progressives have the like smallest difference and they go knives out at each other. And the conference was really good. One of the important things, like if you go to this conference and you're like, okay, I maybe met some people or whatever, but did the world really get anything out of this conference? And what I would note is I think the biggest impact of the conference isn't like us having people at it or whatever. It is because you guys go and because you make this happen, you make this like a really packed event. I mean, packed, like this conference was
sold out.
large,
Yeah.
like much larger than I anticipated. And we then are able to have lots of reporters there, and we didn't have all the reporters, as we mentioned, like was a wire, but we did have a lot. We had New York Times, we had CNN, we had NPR, we had Mother Jones. Oh no, Mother Jones was kept out, but they did a great piece. I like their piece. But anyway, lots of reporters there. The reporters only cover the movement when the conference happens. Like, they need a forcing function to cover the movement. And we can go out and they can do the umpteenth profile on us, but you know, that's going to die down after a while. They need something new to be scared about. And you guys making this conference happen, going there, talking with reporters, you all came together and gave them something to be scared about. And because of that, every one of you who contributed to this, you contributed to this press cycle that's happening right now. And this press cycle that's happening right now is going to give us a second boost, is going to help us move things forward, and is going to help keep this conversation centered in a way that when people are afraid of controversy or afraid of doing new things, like the, you know, Effective Altruism organization, like big gala that happens every year, and I'm sure they spend tons of money on, you know, that doesn't end up getting less of press. It doesn't end up moving any idea forward. It doesn't end up doing anything meaningful for the world. But just by being at an event like this, you guys did a lot. And I really, really deeply appreciate that. In fact, I'd say, like, if you're like, oh, you know, the money that I paid for this, like $900 or whatever, right? Would you have rather I just give you two $900 or $1,000? Categorically, I would rather it have gone to the conference, given the amount of press that the conference has generated. Like, that's what I would have paid. I'd probably pay what, $50,000 for a press cycle this big. And I think that that's probably about what went in from our fans. And that's amazing. I have more than that. Like, a PR person, I could pay a PR firm hundreds of thousands of dollars and not get a press cycle this big.
100%. Yeah.
And that is huge, because that's what we need to keep this centered in the public mind. But it's also why, you know, if you look at our video on hard EA versus soft EA, we recently started hardea.com, which is meant to sort of bring funding to some of the other underfunded cause areas where people are founding companies in those spaces. Right now, we've drained the amount of money that we had put in for it. So if anybody wants to like put a big grant in for that so we can do something big, let us know. But right now, we've invested in like 10 companies, like 10 to 40K each, which I'm really excited about, because I'm excited about a lot of the technology that they're bringing, but also it's an investment and not a donation, which means if any of these companies does well, then we'll have even more money to put into this type of thing.
Into future
which is something
companies.
I'm really excited about.
The gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah. So thank you all for making this happen. You know, thank you to Kevin Dolan and Luke. I mean, Luke seems to be the really competent operator that made this happen. But yeah, this was wild.
Yeah, you guys are amazing. And also Kevin Dolan's wife and kids who were there. Oh my gosh, they were so cute. But yeah, anyway, I love you and I love Natalism. I love Natal Con, and it was really good to see all y'all who showed up. So thanks for coming.
Yeah. One funny anecdote I'll give, because this is actually something that I was talking to, like just last week, I was talking to one of the like leading people of the Effective Altruism movement. and I was asking them, like, how can we work together?
Mhm.
And they just didn't seem to understand, like, I was like, look, I got a hard yay here. I am open to working with you guys. Like, we have a bigger movement in terms of like members and focus now.
Mhm.
You know, we've got people in the White House. You guys have been begging for that for years. You guys have been spending hundreds of millions of dollars. Like, if you guys can throw a little money our way, we're going to be able to throw a little attention your way and help some of your projects, or projects that at least we can both agree on, come to fruition. And they basically didn't understand why. They were like, I don't understand. And like how or why we would work together. And it helped me understand why the movement's gotten as bad as it has. Specifically, what they pointed out was that the very, very large EA orgs that get all this money, like Open Phil, they're
Mhm.
getting money, huge amounts of money from lots of donors, and they have to be afraid of doing anything that would anger any of the donors.
That makes sense.
So
Yeah.
they end up taking the most conservative, boring approach. But a conservative approach like that means they're donating to things that would be raising money anyway.
Yeah.
And so the money is just completely pissed away. Like giving your money
Which
to
runs
Open
against
Phil,
the fundamental principles of effective altruism, because in addition to looking at the severity of a problem and how tractable it is, how feasible it is to actually address it, you're looking at how much attention and help it already has. And you don't want to focus on things that already have help. You want to focus on the things that are overlooked, which is one of the reasons why Malcolm chose to address demographic collapse. Oh, I'm so sorry. So,
anyway, love you to death, Simone.
love you too.
Octavian, what do you want to give mommy?
This flower right here.
Why do you want to give her that flower?
Because I love mommy and love giving flowers mommy all the time because I love her.
Okay. Hey, Titan, where are you going?
Can I see the video?
What did you see today?
I've been having fun.
You've been having fun?
Yeah.
What were you doing?
I was playing with rocks.
You playing with rocks?
Yeah, what?
At where? At the creek?
Yeah.
And did you see a snake?
Yeah.
How did you?
With mommy, it was very scary.
And then you kept everyone safe?
Yeah. Mom, Daddy, look what I found.
What is that?
I think I just saw it in the ground. It's
Do not tap the window with rocks.
No. Oh, that's.